Good evening and welcome to tonight's broadcast. We have a special one for you. I was thinking about making this an episode of Pizza Punk, and I'm realizing now that I think the Pizza Punk is going to be a separate thing, and that we're going to open it up a little bit more and just have just interviews like we just had the director of Dark City on, and that wasn't a Pizza Punk episode either. That was just Alex Proyas. So we're going to do a similar sort of vibe. That's how we're doing it. So welcome to tonight's show. I just got done watching a killer documentary made by a killer friggin' documentary filmmaker. I mean, I was really blown away by the craft, and we're going to talk a lot about it. This guy is also he is a passionate lover of all things Danzig, as am I. So there's a lot of different intersections to converse with tonight's guest, from filmmaking to documentary filmmaking to music, just all of the above. I am very pleased to welcome Don Argott, documentary filmmaker from 914 Pictures, tonight on the show. Welcome, Don. How are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on. This is awesome.
Very awesome. Very awesome. So I watched the Dio documentary. We'll just start right off with the Dio.
Yeah, get into it.
I watched the Dio documentary. It had been in my queue for a while. I was like, yeah, because I just like a good rock documentary. Even if I don't know them, even if I don't know the music, I love that stuff. I just really do. I relish it. And so I have that in my queue. And then I didn't realize that it was you who made it. And then, we were talking about having you come on. I was like, I better watch this. Let me watch this thing. So we have something to talk. We have many things to talk about, but
many things,
yeah, we could talk about that. And I got to tell you, man, well, first of all, as I briefly mentioned off air, I am not like a hardcore Dio fan. I know Holy Diver. I have the third record on vinyl, whatever it is. Sacred Heart. Sacred Heart. I got Sacred Heart at a flea market. And, listened to it. I was like, all right, this is what Dio's all about. Cool. And I'll tell you, the angle of Dio, or the piece of Dio that I really have come to admire, that I really am enamored by. And I can say this because I'm not a hardcore Black Sabbath fan. I prefer Dio Sabbath to Black Sabbath with Ozzy, man. I love Dio's Sabbath, dude. He's a great frontman. He gives those songs an energy that is not present, not better per se, but that is just not present with the Ozzy versions of the song, the original versions of the songs. And I suppose this is blasphemous because we, considering my position, our positions, people's positions on other bands.
Yes.
where
with,
this
replaced frontman.
Yeah, with replaced frontman. But for some reason, the Dio Sabbath is super valid. Probably my favorite Sabbath song is probably Neon Nights.
Really?
Yeah, I love it that much. I just a phenomenal track. But that, it brings up an interesting question, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on it before we go into all the other stuff. When does is Dio Sabbath one of the few, if only, examples where a new frontman comes in and does a equally valid version of a band?
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely it's a short list, right? And obviously very subjective. You could argue, Sammy Hagar coming into Van Halen didn't make Van Halen worse. There are people obviously that prefer the David Lee Roth Van Halen. People can have arguments till they die about that shit. But ultimately, I think the success of like the band, not like, let's say, remember when what was it, John Corabi took over like Motley Crue, like
that was like work. The third singer, right?
But that didn't work, right? So that's like, okay, that's a failed experiment. Michael Graves, we can go on. But the ultimately, when it comes down to it, is I think that one of the things, other than probably Van Halen, and I'm sure there's other examples too, but I think what Ronnie did in Sabbath is one of the very, very few like unique success stories, because he didn't come in and replace Ozzy. And I think that's the distinction, is that he came in and made it his own version of the band. And again, people will, argue till they die over like what they love. Ozzy, you can't say that, this Sabbath is better than that Sabbath, or Ozzy's this. And to me, I try not to, get too hung up in that, because to me, it's like, we all win. Like, it's great that we have the first 6 Black Sabbath records, and it's great that we have those 2 amazing Dio Sabbath records. Like, nobody's
3,
right. Well, 3 for sure. Well, more technically, yeah.
Technically,
4. 4.
Although, wait. Okay, so that was actually going to be my very next thing. So then, something that's super unique and interesting that happens with this version, and I think really is a testament to the integrity of all parties involved.
Yeah.
And that is that the Dio Sabbath reunites to do an album, but they decide, hey, look, Ozzy Sabbath is like a thing. Ozzy was the original singer. We're like, that Black Sabbath is an entity, an active entity. So let's be our own thing. Let's be a separate thing and just be heaven and hell. And it kills me because, it was on my radar. I made an active decision not to go see them. Really? I want to say it was 2008. I just slept on it. Maybe it was 2009. It was right around the time that album came out. And I just was like, like I'd like to see it, but And then fuck, I just missed out.
Yeah. Well, I think what's cool about the film, from it's, to me, it's like a culmination of like my whole life leading up to that moment. Like I grew up in, North Jersey, in Pequannock, New Jersey, very typical, suburban, existence, very, very typical of that area of New Jersey, and had an awesome childhood. And I got into punk rock and heavy metal, like at a pretty young age, because my cousin was a couple years older than me. So he was the first person that introduced me to the Misfits. He was the first person to introduced me to like Venom and like, all the shit that I ended up, Slayer, all the stuff that I really, really kind of credit as being the, kind of the building blocks of who I became. I think, it's interesting when you kind of reflect back. I just turned 50. So I'm like super fucking reflective all of a sudden. I'm like thinking back, I don't know how long I got left, but looking back of like, how did I get here? And it's cool. Like when you start to see all these little connections that you've made, and really my whole life, much like people that are in bands owe their whole lives into like what they were into as kids. Right. And like, that's the best thing. That's the dream. If you are a kid and you get in a band and it becomes successful and you get to do that the rest of your life, like very few, that's like winning the lottery. There's very few people that get to live, ride that whole thing out. And, I feel like what I've been able to accomplish is so much related to the music that I listen to. It gave me my kind of like my fire. It gave me my like moral compass. It gave me the things to be pissed off about. It was like, it was all those things. And like getting to this point to get the opportunity to tell Ronnie James Dio's story, first of all, was like an insane, like, it's still to this day kind of doesn't make any sense to me that like I'm somehow connected now to the Ronnie James Dio story. But really like the thing for us, and Demi Fenton, who is the co-director on it, and I have a great backstory with him, but which also kind of relates to music and shit. But, we really wanted this to be a love letter to not only Dio, but to the music that we love, and to try to make people understand what is so special about this shit. And I feel like it wasn't an active thing that we were like, oh, we're going to make this love letter to Ryan. It's the way it kind of came out. Any good art just like kind of takes on a life of its own.
Sure.
And it had its own energy. Yeah, I did a film years ago about the band Lamb of God, and it turned out that when I was filming their fans around the world, and we were talking about how music kind of like unites people. And then Randy got arrested in the Czech Republic.
Wait a minute. Whoa. Wait a minute. Wait, hold on a second. I remember, that you did that movie, the thing about that as well?
Yeah.
Oh my God, dude. This guy's done
Look at
everything.
you got to put my
Holy
filmography
shit,
up there, man.
dude. I didn't know it's
did the
down in the
Pentagram,
thing. It is. It's
Pentagram
down in the
movie,
thing.
Last Days Here. That was
I did not realize that. Oh my God, that was
yeah.
a harrowing. We were just talking about that the other day. I forget
No
where
shit.
I was. I was talking about it was a harrowing story of what had happened with, you know, just all the factors involved and just the craziness and stuff.
What was amazing is so their manager had seen my film, The Art of the Steal, and he was actually based in South Jersey, and I'm in Philadelphia. And he had seen the film, and he reached out and said, "I'm the manager of Lamb of God. I want to do a documentary about, you know, kind of like the band's reach and their kind of like fans around the world, because there's like a lot of interesting stories." And so that we started making that movie, and we followed this cab driver in Colombia, Bogota, Colombia. We followed this. Who else was it? There was a woman, a girl in India who is like in a death metal band, who is like an amazing character. We found people in Israel, and so we talked. We were making this thing about the band, all the while like kind of following them on their tour. And then when they landed in the Czech Republic, I get a call from Larry, the manager, saying like, Randy's in prison in the Czech Republic. And the first thing I can think of is like, I got to get to Prague to fucking film this, right? Because I'm in story filmmaker mode. And obviously these people, the band had become close friends to us. We spent a lot of time together, and we bonded pretty quickly. So, and I spent a lot of time with Randy prior to us like starting filming. So, you know, it was brutal, but at the same time, you know, you kick into that kind of like, you know, I'm making a movie here, and like, this is not the time to like put the cameras down. This is the time to pick the cameras up, and because we don't know what's going to happen. And so then basically I flew to Prague and was with his wife and his lawyer, and we just kind of did it. I shot as much as I could, but that whole thing was just so like, talk about luck or bad luck. But I mean, in terms of like a story developing and unfolding before your eyes, is pretty incredible. So.
Greetings to Jody Ramone in the comments. He's throwing up the devil horns, which is very appropriate for the episode. And he also is commenting on your shirt, Dan. He's saying it's an awesome shirt.
Don.
He said Dan.
Don.
He said Dan, so I said Don. I said Dan.
I get it all the time.
It's all your fault, Jody.
I've been called worse. And the funny thing is, honestly, no shit. Like I'm like I was when I was, you know, 15, 16-year-old. My whole wardrobe is Misfits, Sam Hain, and Danzig, and an occasional Black Flag shirt. So, and the Slayer.
You know what's funny? There's a band I really like you should check out called Bad Nerves. I had them on the show a while back, and they have this lyric that I just fucking love, because I got to tell you, I'm not 50 yet, God willing, knock on wood, but you know, like I think about all sorts of big picture sort of stuff as I age, as one does. And you know, I heard this lyric that just friggin' was such a tonic to the sort of anxieties that come with getting older. And it's something like, you grow tired of growing old. I got a teenage mind. And I was like, fuck yeah, dude. That's it. You know what? I'm tired of growing old when I got a teenage mind in my head, and that's how I have to live my life. That's how I have to be at all times. And you know what? Ever since I started thinking about that, it's made me feel good, like happy, like I feel like that's the way to do it. So I'm kind of like, I don't know, but I thought you might appreciate that
very much so, man,
based on what you just said. So
yeah, it's also like I love, and I've been so grateful that I've been able to work on these types of projects that somehow align with like how you are doing in your life. You know, there's things that sometimes it's like a forced thing, because it's like you're in it, and you know that's the life that you're kind of like feeding off the energy of what you're filming. But a lot of times, like we did this Kurt Vonnegut doc that I co-directed with this guy Bob, and what you talked about, the quote I think it was Morley Safer we were interviewing, and Kurt Vonnegut has this whole thing about like getting old, like we live too long, you know, and he was kind of lamenting on the fact that like, you know, you like when we get to a certain point, you're basically, your life consists of like, doctor's appointments and physical therapy and taking medicine, and like that becomes your routine. And we were talking to these guys that were like morally safer before he passed away, and this other guy Sydney, who was a close friend of Kurt's, they were saying like, you basically waiting around for the next doctor's appointment. And like, when you're somebody like Kurt, and when you're a thinker like that, when you start to feel like, what are we doing here? Like, we got to take a step back and be like, is it really living when you're 94 and you can't wipe your own ass, but you're still breathing? You know what I mean? Like, you have to, these questions that you have to ask yourselves, what artists, ask all the time and confront you with, like those questions. And I think, we don't ask those questions a lot, because I don't think we want to know the answers to them a lot of times,
Yeah. We don't want to know the answers to them a lot of times. You got to listen. You really got to listen to some of the lyrics on this album by the Bad Nerds. I'll send it to you when we get off here. I want to let me just change tracks back to the documentary itself. And I can tell you, I mean, as a filmmaker, as a feature narrative filmmaker, I loved it. But as an aspiring documentary filmmaker, I was blown away by some of the craft in this movie. Particularly, I found it very inspiring, and I'm like taking notes, like thinking in my head, like how I can like copy you without copying you. Just
cool, man.
So inspired by some. First of all, the dramatized. I'm guessing they obviously you recreated, or you made your own B-roll. You shot it on, I guess you either shot it on film stock, or you shot it digitally and then used like Film Convert Pro.
Yeah, we treated it where we shot everything with the same camera. So
yeah. And but it really does. And that's I gotta tell you, the some of the filters and things you could apply with like Film Convert Pro, or like especially the nitrate one, you could trick anybody, man. You could do really cool stuff
nowadays. You wouldn't know the difference.
You could do really cool stuff. And so it was so great. These scenes, there's 3 scenes in particular right off the top of my head. The first one is the guy in the car who is not going to, or no, he's listening on the radio.
Yeah, there's disco, and then he hears Man on the Silver Mountain.
Right, that's what it is. He hears Man on the Silver Mountain, and he's just into it. And that's something you can't find B-roll for that. You have to create it. So it's an opportunity to get super creative. The second one is when Ronnie James Dio becomes the singer of Black Sabbath, and the guy's on the couch doing bong rips with his girlfriend, and it's the 70s, and you just capture. You know what you capture? You capture something that can't be put into words. There's no amount of sound bites. There's no amount of talking heads that can just cut to that vibe. And that is the vibe of the people that were taking in this music and were around at the time. And that's what you did. Listening to music, right? It was an event. It was a thing. It was watching the TV. You sit back on your couch, you pack your bong, you throw on the record, ba and hearing and just the way that this guy gets turned on to Ronnie James Dio on his couch, just fucking A+, dude.
So good. Thanks, man. Thank you so much.
And then the last. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go.
No. Finish. Say what you want to say.
Tell your last one.
Right, and the last one. Then the last one.
It's got to be the Holy Diver one, right?
Yeah, it's the Holy Diver. I think. Are there any more? I'm trying to remember if I'm leaving any of them out. I think that's
there's like the radio station one, with
right
with Nirvana and grunge and all that kind of stuff.
Right. By the way, oh my God, some of the things that hold on. Let me just talk about the Holy Diver one. This is an iconic. The Holy Diver album cover. Even for someone, I can qualify for this because I am not. As I said, I am not like a devout Dio fan. Like I don't actively listen to Dio. Hey, what's going on, Angus? How are you? I'm just, a dude who's like, Ronnie James Dio. Yeah. Dio Sabbath. Yeah, whatever. But even everybody, it is part of the pop culture fabric. Is the Dio Holy Diver album cover with the guy Murray. I didn't even know his name until I watched the documentary with Murray and the guy with the chains on. If you watch Behind the Music, like, in the early aughts, or whatever, like some VH1 programming, you're going to see something about Holy Diver and Ronnie James Dio, which is probably when I first learned about Ronnie James Dio or whatever.
Yeah.
Don lovingly, passionately does this sort of recreation of a story that you could never put B-roll to. Sure. And those chains were probably like plastic chains that you spray paint.
No, they're real chains. They're real.
Get out of here, really?
Yeah, they're real chains.
Oh wow, I thought those were prop chains.
No way, dude. Those are real.
Excellent. How did you film that thing, man? It must have been so dangerous.
What's funny is that when we shot that really was the thing that opened up that kind of motif throughout the film, because when we were doing we did all the interviews and all that stuff first. We interviewed a ton of people, and then we kind of got shut down because of the pandemic, so there was a lull of all that kind of stuff. And then we finished up filming, and I think it was Gene Kirkland, who's the photographer, who tells us that story. As soon as he told us that story, I'm like, this has to be in the movie. But like, because we asked him, do you still have the negatives? You still have like the contact sheet that you made? And he's like, I was looking for it the other day. I can't find it. So I was like, God damn, like this is such a great story. But when you're a filmmaker and storyteller, you're trying to, you got to show. You can't just have a talking head up there just telling the story. Nobody wants to see that. So what are we going to show while this person's, telling this cool but long story? So you need to, and the way he told it was so visual that I was like, we should just let's try this as a recreation. And recreations are really tough, people that talk about it, just like music, very subjective, like what that line is for a good recreation versus a bad recreation. You have the unsolved mysteries recreations, and you have like a kind of like true crime, very
dramatization.
Yeah, and it's really, really hard to pull off that that style of thing. And we've been toying with this for a while in our work. We did a film called Framing John Delorean, and Alec Baldwin, we got to play John Delorean in it, and we did this. We mashed this whole thing up. It was like a harebrained idea. And
wait a minute. So whoa. So what was it like? Hold on. I'm pausing you for a second because you just casually mentioned that you worked with Alec Baldwin. Yeah, what was it like working with Alec Baldwin? That must have been like
what's amazing is like it was crazy. He talk about, again, like your life has these like insane moments in it. But we did this film, The Art of the Steal, which was the third film that we made in our career.
Right?
No, it's actually it was the one that it came out around Exit Through the Gift Shop. But
that's what I'm thinking of. That's what I'm thinking of.
Art of the Steal is about this kind of art heist in Philadelphia. Is kind of like it's a really, really interesting story. Check it out. I think it's on Amazon if you want to check it out. I definitely will check it out. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. But Alec was a huge fan of that film, and he loved that film and told everybody about that film. And he invited us to the Hamptons to do the special screening. And we ended up having this like crazy night where he opened up this restaurant across the street that was closed to make us all this food. And it was like, and then he's telling stories about Martin Scorsese, and like, you don't talk, you just listen. You know what I mean? That's how it's like. So, but working with him, when I called him, because we had this idea to do this Delorean film, and I was like, the whole conceit was that there are all these competing Hollywood film projects about John Delorean that were trying to get made at one point in time. And at one point there was like 4 big time greenlit Hollywood film projects, and then none of them happened. So we were like, the way into the story was like, why does this guy have this story that Hollywood, can't seem to crack, but they want to tell the story? Maybe there's a way for us to like learn who John is through that,
In 2 sentences, for anybody watching that might be curious, who is John Delorean? Super quick.
John Delorean, if everyone here has seen Back to the Future, that's the DeLorean car. And the John Delorean was the creator of that, and is a famous kind of like insane story about Northern Ireland and
cocaine.
Yeah, cocaine and FBI stings. It's insane. It's a pretty insane story. So Alec, we asked him if he'd be interested in playing Alec to play John in these like recreations that we had that were like kind of like showing what the Hollywood version of this story would look like, right? So we kind of meld that with like documentary elements and stuff. So it runs hot and cold for people. People either love it or they don't like it. So whatever, we did it. It's out there. You can like it or not. It's on Hulu now. I think you can watch it. So, but yeah, Alec he's an intense guy. He's an interesting guy to be around. And I think like, I didn't want to get sucked up in like all the bullshit of it all. I kind of like the idea of just like, working with this guy, and he was having fun, and, he was cool to work with, and
awesome.
He was awesome. He's an awesome dude.
And then what were you talking about that I rudely interrupted you to tell me that sidetrack story?
Oh,
now we have to circle back. Now go back.
Yeah, we were talking about the recreations in Dio. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we're talking about, right. That's right. Now you were talking about, right. You were just talking about the recreations, recreating with Dio. Actually, you kind of finished that. You wrapped that up already pretty much.
Yes.
So yeah, but and then some other amazing aesthetics that I loved about this documentary. One, I love the transparencies with the Sharpie written over it. Just a great organic way to sort of do something that has been done to death. And that's a problem. It's not a problem per se, but it's like, how do you do something that's done a million times in documentaries, but do it in such a unique way that kind of feels like analog and also feels like rock and roll, and it kind of looks like a contact, like commentary via contact paper. Like you're like, hey, we're laying this laminate over because we want to write comments on the photo of whatever.
Yeah. Well, so Demi and Fenton, who was the co-director and editor, we talked a lot because we're both huge Dio fans, and we decided to do this, co-directed together. And Dem's an amazing filmmaker in his own right, but he's mostly been our editor for the past like 20 years. And we co-directed the Last Days Here, the Pentagram film, together as well. And, it was just one of those opportunities where, he got to do a little bit more than he normally does. And, but he's an amazing, kind of storyteller and filmmaker in his own right. And he had this idea when we were kind of talking about how to put the movie together. Because, when you're doing a film like this, where the main subject is not around anymore, and it's not like there's this treasure trove of like 10 million interviews of Ronnie James Dio to pull from. So you got to get creative, right? And sometimes, that is where great ideas are born out of, because you don't have the resources and you don't have all the materials that you need. So you have to get creative. And, Dem's like kind of direction was, let's make this like the Metal Kids took over the overhead projector and are given the lesson plan on Ronnie James Dio. And I was like, fucking brilliant. And so that's all his handwriting. And so I love that there's that personal touch in there too. And it was such a crowning like moment in my career to be able to like, make this film, get to meet the Dio folks and get to meet a lot of my, musical heroes.
Oh yeah. Actually, we got to talk about that.
Talk to them,
yes.
Oh my God. And like, it's just
holy
like
shit.
Insane,
Another, before we move on to that, I just want to quickly harp on the fact too, that, one of the two elements this element that we were just talking about, like the transparency element that we were just talking about. One way that this is utilized in the narrative or whatever, the story or the thing, it's used to add little notes where it's like you have soundbite going into soundbite going into soundbite. It's not like you don't want to break that up with a screen of black. You don't want to break up the flow of what is being discussed in the sequence with this little tidbit that's kind of related and interesting, but doesn't serve the story. So instead, boom, I'm laying this right on top, little Easter egg thing. Hey, look at this. There's this little thing, blah, 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 blah. And then also with the lyrics. And I don't know what the hell Dio sang about until I was watching this documentary. And I just saw he was like really like he was just a really magical, positive little man who just, like he really was kind of like a magical metal elf in a way.
Yeah.
And
100%.
Just like a guy who this is what I get out of it is he was just a really authentic soul who never gave up, which is something I deeply admire. Just time and again. And here's a guy too I don't think, I think even more emphasis could have been put on this in the doc. I mean, it's mentioned like twice, but it's just something like that's so extraordinary when you really sit and think about it. This is a guy who was singing and doing his thing in the 50s.
Yeah.
He started in he had a bunch of groups. He was putting out singles. He's a contemporary of the Beatles, and he was a contemporary of Elvis.
Yeah.
And that he endured decade after decade after decade after he found who he was. He found his identity in Dio. He was trying to find it. He's like, okay, I'm going to be in the Elf. Okay, I'm going to be in Rainbow. Okay, I'm going to be, and that's the theme of the documentary. Time and again, Dio is not the boss. He's not the shot caller. Iommi's the shot caller. Blackmore's the shot caller. Finally, Dio becomes the shot caller. And once he's in that position, it's like no matter what the wave of success or the wave of whatever uncertainty, but no matter the peak of the hill or the deep valley, he was like, this is who I am. This is where I'm at. I found where I'm supposed to be, and I'm just going to do that.
Yeah, man.
Beautiful.
I mean, like, we made this film during like the pandemic, and, you know, for a lot of people, the pandemic was like a really bad time. We were very fortunate because we were working. We had a lot of work already when things had shut down. So we actually did really well. But the fact that like every day my job was to go in and listen to Ronnie James Dio, it's like I was the luckiest guy in the world for like a couple of years, you know, being able to spend time with this amazing human being. Like, that's really what it comes down to. And by the end of it, you know, we're just trying to convey what this guy was really all about. It's not bullshit. It's not a version of him that like, and then there's the shitty version that's going to come out later of like Ronnie, you know, like the tyrant who was a dick to everybody. It's like, no, this was this guy. He was amazing. And there's very few people like him. And looking back at his career and what he was able to accomplish, I mean, again, when I said earlier, when I was talking about like my career and getting to this moment, it's like, you know, it was voices like Ronnie that like even probably subconsciously kept me going. It made me think that like you could do this. You know, that's what punk rock's all about. That's what heavy metal's all about. Like we don't want your shit. We're going to do our shit. Right. And like, we don't care if we can't do it as good as you guys over there. We're going to do our thing. And then, you know, you're talking about like kind of movements built off of that, like over time. And it's this continuum, you know? So like Ronnie, what he imparted to me was like the believing in myself so that I would start my own company and make my own movies, and got to tell his story eventually. And by me getting to tell his story, hopefully I'm going to inspire more people to either seek him out or live more like Ronnie or whatever, like you, like as a filmmaker, seeing something cool in it that you want to try. I mean, like that's
so beyond inspired by,
but that's what's so beautiful about like what this is all about, right? Music, movies. It's the shit that like we find early on and it never leaves us. And it helps form the communities that we kind of build off of the rest of our lives. You know what I mean? These are friendships that I'll have the rest of my life now because of this, you know? So that's incredible.
Now this movie, I mean, you know, there's several documentaries are really difficult to make for a lot of reasons. And the best way to make a documentary is when you have full cooperation with the estate or the person of interest or the, you know, the subject matter, and you get access to all of the talking heads that would elevate the story. And I would say without a doubt that everybody you were able to, you have the definitive Ronnie James Dio documentary, because I mean, you got everybody that you need to get for a Ronnie James Dio documentary, let alone motherfucking members of Black Sabbath. He got Bill Ward, fucking what's his name?
Tony Iommi,
Geezer Butler, Bill Ward. I said Bill Ward already.
And
Vinny.
Vinny.
Oh my God.
Apathy. Yep.
I could not believe that you had. So take me through what it was like interviewing these guys. What was it like interviewing members of Black Sabbath?
It was, it's surreal. I mean, honestly, this is the stuff that, like, it's hard to put into words if you don't, if you didn't grow up listening to this music. But like, it's more than just like songs you like. It's more than like a cool record. It's your fucking, it's DNA. You know what I mean? It's woven inside you, right? It's way bigger than like, oh, I really like that Paranoid record. It's like, dude, this music is the soundtrack to my life. It's like woven into me. So, when you get the opportunity to meet people that created this stuff, it's, to me, I never get starstruck because it's not what it's about for me. It's about like, I have an opportunity now to like, I'm in front of this person and I don't want his signature. I don't want, you know what I mean? I don't want to pose for a picture. I want to talk to him. I want him to know me. I want him to hear what I have to say about what he's been able to do for me or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, be like a real connection versus something that like, hey, I got to meet, so-and-so after the show and I got my picture with him. It's like, yeah, that's cool. Like, but I had these opportunities to like meet these people and spend time in their homes or wherever. And like, it's surreal. It's all you can say. You have to constantly kind of keep yourself in check of like, holy shit, I'm talking to Bill Ward. Holy shit, I'm in Rob Halford's house. Like, holy shit, Lita Ford's like Rob Halford, handing me her, her double neck thing that she was in, like the Close My Eyes Forever video. Like, what? Like, what's happening now? You know what I mean? So you just go with it, and you're cool and you're yourself, and we've been able to connect with people and stay in touch with people because we're just like to think that we're just cool people that are into what they're into, but we also have stuff that they're into that we do, and it's a pretty cool place to be,
So when you went to these locations or when you went to do these interviews, was there ever any like, was there ever any like, you walk through this and there's this thing from this thing and they're like, oh yeah, that thing, blah 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 blah, like that sort of thing? Did you anything like that?
Well, probably the biggest one is at Wendy's office. Wendy's got the original artwork for Holy Diver, and it's like, yeah, she mentions in the movie. So like that, and that like seeing that like in person was kind of like, it's like seeing like fucking Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
For certain people, it's like, oh, I'm in the presence of something amazing, right? I'm trying to think back. There wasn't a lot of people. We didn't film direct at their houses a lot of times. Tony wanted the crazy thing about Tony Iommi is he took forever to schedule. COVID happened. We were going to fly to the UK, but then the UK shut down. Everything shut down, and then weirdly, we were simultaneously doing this Phil Spector doc series for Showtime. And I had to go to the UK to do an interview for like the main interview for this doc. And so it just so happened that I was in the UK, but I had to quarantine for 10 days at some like Airbnb. And that was in that time span we filmed Tony Iommi. So even though I was in the UK, I still had to do it via, Skype or, Zoom. So I had a crew go, and we had rented a studio that it was close to his house. But like, again, nicest dudes, like really, really, they're not the most like Geezer, Tony and Bill are definitely not the most talkative types. Like Geezer, I think we probably did like a 20-minute interview, but we asked him a lot of questions. He's like, he's not very like forthcoming with
explain that just in general. You are, I mean, you're an interviewer and you are a documentary filmmaker. And if anybody could speak on the art of trying to get people to talk, I do this on my YouTube channel in a very casual way. And I will tell you that it can be really hard to, especially if you want someone to talk about a certain something or whatever, you have to like approach them in the right way. Sometimes you have to ask, if they're not understanding the question, you have to ask the question slightly differently or in a different kind of way. You try to circle back. Sometimes you just got to cut loose and let go, be like, okay, that's not what I'm hoping to like ask a question about is not being understood, and I'm not going to get an answer. And I only have this window of time. So I need to jettison that whole notion and focus on something, because you're thinking about sound bites at the end of the day, right?
Right.
What have you learned about that process over the years? And like, is there any sort of psychology that you put into, like, I suppose reading people, probably, like, you have to read body language. I don't know. Tell me about that.
It's an interesting. I've talked about this a lot, you know, when talking about like certain things that don't get talked enough about. I think when you're making a doc, I think a lot of people don't focus. They think like, oh, you just do an interview, you know, and you get you ask the person a lot of questions, and you know, just like everything, it's obviously way more complicated than that. But so much of it, and so much of this has, you know, like just like any playing music or making films, it's about you. It's about like when I walk into a room and I have a connection with somebody, that's like, I can't define what that is. I can't define what makes people comfortable or not comfortable with like certain people in rooms. So for better or worse, my partner Sheena and I, who we like co-produce, produce together and co-direct sometimes together, like we have that quality where like we walk into we've always been those people that people would tell their like deepest, darkest secrets to. And it's like, I just met you. You know what I mean? It's just like, there's just certain people. I don't know why that is, but I think that's obviously that's an unspoken thing. That's not something you can like train.
It's energy.
Somebody to,
it's energy.
It's energy. You're right. And then I think in terms of like how you ask questions, you also want to spend time before you sit down with somebody. I always like to spend, you know, a ton of time, because I don't want to like cut too much into the time that we want to spend. And I certainly don't want to talk about the same stuff that we're going to talk about on camera, so it doesn't feel like they're rehearsed or anything. But I do want to talk a little bit about like what my expectations are and the kind of things I want to talk about, just because at that moment, then you're at least giving them an opportunity to say, you know what, I don't want to talk about this or this. And I think when a lot of interviewers fail is they go in and they don't have that rapport, and they ask a question that just comes out of left field, and the person's like, you know, fuck you, I don't need to sit here and do this. And so it's all about the relationship. It's all about the energy. It's all about that like respect that you have to earn very quickly, frankly. And, you know, when you're doing projects like Dio, we're coming in as like ultimate fans, right? Like, we love Ronnie, you love Ronnie. Let's talk about how much we love Ronnie. Like, that's an easy one, right? But like when we got into stuff with Wendy, having to talk about some of the uncomfortable things in the story, like firing Vivian and like Ronnie and them not like living together, their whole marriage, like things that were sensitive. Yeah, we had a relationship enough with Wendy at that point where we had this kind of like jokey yet like, yeah, you think we're kidding, but we are going to get into this. Like, we are going to talk about this, Wendy, you know, like, and, you know, but that comes over that that wasn't the first interview that we did. Right. That's
but
like,
she's also she's also kind of to an extent, because she's essentially the boss on in certain ways, right? In a bunch of ways.
Yes and no. But I mean, what we try to do in these types of situations where, you know, and this is one of those kind of like ugly realities or whatever you want to call it. But, you know, as there are more and more docs being made on bigger people, clearly the people that are, you know, in control of the libraries or the story want to have a say. They don't want to be like, hey, Joe filmmaker, here's carte blanche and do whatever you want and tell my story, warts and all. Like, you know,
right.
That's
of course
unrealistic, right? So you have to toe that line. And I always feel like the way you toe it, and it has to be personal to you, and it has to line up with like your morality or whatever your ethics are, is that like, hey, I know that we're doing this as somewhat of a, like, you know, you're giving us this material with the understanding that we're not going to make you look bad or not going to paint you in a negative light, but not that we would do that anyway, but there has to be an understanding that like, hey, if we're going to do this, we're going to have to ask hard questions. I'm not going to just do a 90-minute Ronnie James Dio is awesome movie, because no one wants to see that. And frankly, people that know that are fans know a lot of the inner workings and a lot of the dirty laundry that's been aired over the years. So like, you can't not talk about that stuff. And I think that's what gains you trust from an audience, regardless of like who is the perceived person behind the scenes. If it doesn't, I mean, Wendy had zero editorial control over the film. Not to say that like if she said something, we wouldn't have taken it seriously or we would have whatever, but she was so enamored.
She was trusting.
She was trusting. She gave us a space. We made the film. We flew out to LA to screen it for her in a private theater. And, you know, when the film was over, she sobbed for like 20 minutes straight.
Wow.
And we came back in and she just gave us hugs. And she's like, you know, Ronnie would have loved this. And you made him and me so proud. And I couldn't be more proud of this film. So like, that's how we kind of started the relationship after like what we, so it was not like we had a screening that was just like, you can't say this. And I can't believe you put that in. Or none of that. It was like, and it was not all glowing and it's not all positive and, you know, rainbows and and fairy tales, you know? So I think it's honest. And I think we told Ronnie's story and told it in a way that I think, he would be proud of, but also like that he'd say we also got it right. You know, we did a screening at South by, that's where we premiered it, and Sebastian Bach was there and Geezer Butler was there, which was
Sebastian Bach he's a character in the movie.
That guy is such a character, man. It's funny because I walked into his house and he had this painting of an old Batman cover.
Oh,
and I was like, oh, cool. I was like, I did a documentary called Batman. He literally, he goes, hold on a second. You did Batman and Bill? He's like, I'm in touch with Athena. Like she painted this picture for me. I commissioned her off of the movie. No shit. Like this is the first time I'm meeting him walking into his house, you know, and he's like, and the piece that I pointed out was something Athena painted for him with the daughter of Bill Finger, a granddaughter of Bill Finger, because Sebastian saw the film and reached out to Athena to tell her how much he loved it. And that's how that whole relationship started. So talk about getting into, you know, a good space with somebody. It's like, oh, cool. Now you want to talk about Dio? And so it was funny because he was pretty hungover. I think he was on a cruise and one of those like, you know, whatever, Sebastian Bach cruises or whatever, rock cruises or whatever. So he kind of even forgot about the interview. Like when we pulled up there, they let us in and he was like, clearly it was like, oh shit, I forgot I even like agreed to do this. So luckily we broke the ice pretty quick. And but yeah, he was feeling it. And then we went into his record room and had that moment where he was like, he played the last song. And
that was excellent. Beautiful. That was excellent. Beautiful. It was awesome. Beautiful. You see, those are like but here's the thing. And it goes back, going back to that energy. By the way, just to touch back on what you were saying before with the just dealing with the, you know, making movies with people who are in charge of the states and things. Yeah. It's a mixture of it's politics and it's also integrity and it's trying to find the right balance. But to go back to Sebastian Bach, friggin', you know, again, yeah, you break the ice with him, everything's chill, and then you get these really authentic, it's like cameras roll and you get these really authentic, unplanned moments of dynamite where he's like showing off the record and he talks about the last song and it's just, you can't make that shit up, man. It's just beautiful. So good.
Yeah. And it also like creates that part of the film, which is beautiful. Like, you know, you don't know how all these pieces, you know, but I always tell people like making a documentary is like putting a puzzle together with a bunch of blank pieces. It's like, there's no blueprint here. Like you're moving stuff around constantly to see what works, what doesn't work. And then, you obviously have to have an idea of like the thing you're making when you're shooting it. But ultimately, you know, it all comes down to like how you piece it all together and how you put it together and what stories you choose to put in and what you leave out and all that kind of stuff. So it's challenging. It's really challenging. But like when you get these moments when everybody like that moment where he's like talking about Ronnie's best song, which is his last song, like whether you agree with that or not, it's a beautiful segue into where that is in the movie that gets us to that next point. So it's like, that's what I mean. Like so this was a puzzle piece that we didn't know it was going to fit or if it was going to even be in the puzzle at all. But it turned out like that was a great piece and that made another moment like kind of connect and,
It's the beauty of creativity, man. And it's the beauty. And also it's true in that it's a testament. What you're talking about is a testament that, and this applies to like narrative film as much as it does documentary film. You sometimes you find the story no, it definitely applies to documentary film, but what I mean to say is it can also apply to a narrative fictional story that you're telling. Sometimes you find the story, or you find the story unintentionally in the edit. It comes out in the edit, and it's part of that. It's a beautiful part of the creative process.
Yeah,
that's what the creative process is. It's just like everything just works in that kind of way and snaps together. But yeah, that's really cool. And it's amazing. That's an amazing film. The Bob Finger documentary, because it was a great injustice what was done to Bill
Finger.
Bob Kane. It's the same thing with Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. It's the same exact story. You got the big idea man, or you got the person that comes up with the seed, and then you got the person that tends that seed and turns it into this ginormous tree. And that was Bill Finger, dude, who 100%. Invented just as much. Man, so much shit came from Bill that, when you look at the original drawings of Batman in the red leotard with the dynamo mask, it's just like, it's kind of,
it wasn't going to cut it. It wasn't going to cut it.
It wasn't going to cut it, but Bob Finger, Bob Kane, I'm crossing wires here. Bob Kane was a shrewd businessman who had who had parents that showed him how to
play the game.
And that's why you see Bob Kane's name everywhere and Bill Finger's not as much, although that's changing little by little.
Incredible.
It is pretty incredible. And it's good that movies like that are out there, sort of showing a rarely seen piece of the story that is so integral to the history of what essentially is. These comic book characters are our mythology. I heard Nick 100%. Cage say this in an interview. He was talking about how, the Greeks, they have their gods. Everybody's got their own mythology. What do Americans have? America's a new country. Our mythology is our comic books, one of them at least,
for sure.
And especially when you think about how tied in they were to events like World War II by bonds, like all that stuff, like Captain America, the personification of what we hope and wish and aspire America to be, not to go down that ugly path, but
not to keep plugging my own shit, but like, why not?
Go ahead, plug away.
So that we did, because we did Batman and Bill, we ended up remember Quibi? That was around for like a hot minute. It was like it was Jeffrey Katzenberg's like kind of failed mobile. It was everything was going to be on your phone. It was like content for your phone. It was like and then the pandemic happened, and then they launched it during the pandemic, and it just failed.
And they did the most dangerous game.
Yes. Yeah.
So it was all vertical, right? Wasn't it like
they had all this money. Exactly. They had all this money. They threw all this money at like content creators, like, and big names like Steven Spielberg, like you name it. And so we get a call after a couple years after Batman and Bill from the Russo brothers, who got contracted by Quibi.
You got a call from the Russo brothers?
Yeah. So they want to do, there was a book called Slugfest, and it's about the decades-long rivalry between Marvel and DC. And they were going to do these as Quibi, like short-form pieces.
Shit.
So we created this whole thing. It's 10 episodes. You should see.
Right. That's what's I saw it in your resume thing at the bottom.
So Ray Wise from Twin Peaks,
of course. Yes.
He plays Jack Kirby in the recrees that we do.
Oh, that's
good.
He's
a
casting.
Dead ringer for Jack Kirby.
Yeah, that's good casting.
So you got to check it out. It's on Roku now, because all that. So Quibi failed, and I guess they sold whatever content garage sale shit to Roku. So it's on Roku. No one knows about it, but like Kevin Smith narrates it. It's really, and Russo brothers executive produced it, we directed it. Like, has an incredible cast, and they're just like short little vignettes about, you know, like the comic book industry. And we tried to find like obscure stories too, like stories that even comic book people might like not know about. So like when, you know, there was when Jack Kirby left Marvel to go to DC, he basically created a series of comics there, and he did one called and the story is this guy Funky Flashman, which was basically Stan Lee, and it's this way that he was kind of like ribbing Stan and like, you know, kind of like making fun of him, you know, not so inconspicuously. So
Right.
it's like stories like that, and then there's the guys that wrote Doctor Strange on when they were high on mescaline. It's a good watch. It's a good watch.
I want to take a moment just to mention that we are running a contest. And if you watch this episode, wait until the end. I'm going to ask a trivia question. Actually, Don is going to ask the trivia question, and it's going to be a Ronnie James Dio themed trivia question. You're going to send your answer in to FrumessMAIL@gmail.com. In fact, let me just play the quick little video, because I made a quick little video for this. I'm going to be doing a live show every single day. I'm going to be giving away a t-shirt. At the end of every episode, I will ask my trivia question. You will send your answer to FrumessMAIL@gmail.com, and the first person to answer correctly will be the winner. You give me your name, your address, and your t-shirt size. If you are outside of the continental United States, you will have to cover shipping and handling. Join us night after night, where I will be doing t-shirt giveaways. Who doesn't like a free t-shirt? I'm not going to go easy on any of you. I'm going to ask really hard questions. So be prepared. Yeah. So wait till the end of the episode for that. Because that's when the question gets asked. And since we're already doing sponsored sort of situations, let's talk about stickers for a minute. And you know, the funny thing about stickers is they're sticky, and the sponsor of the Frumess channel, who we're also doing that t-shirt contest with, is riotstickers.com. Riotstickers.com is a great place to get stickers. If you have an image that needs to go on a sticker, you go to riotstickers.com. You can get 1,000 stickers for $79. That's like 7 cents per sticker. Technically, it's 8 cents, but it's 7 cents per sticker. You can't beat that deal. Link down in the description below. You go to riotstickers.com/Frumess, FRUMESS. You click on that link. That's where you're going to get that deal. You're not going to find that deal anywhere else, only at riotstickers.com/Frumess. Let's play the quick Less Than Jake 60-second commercial. We will be right back with more Don.
We make stickers, banners, and buttons too, posters and promo cards. There's nothing we can't print for you. From stage backdrops to bass drum heads, we can print on shirts, we can print on hats, we can print on pants. Cheap prices and high quality, quick turnaround times and free shipping. We also offer free artwork support, great customer service, and so much more. Riotstickers.com, Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. Riotstickers.com, Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. Riotstickers.com, Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. Riotstickers.com, Riot Stickers, we are the bomb.
All right, and we're back. Okay, we're back with Don. We're talking about we're talking about a lot of different stuff. We're talking about music, we're talking about documentaries. But you know, besides all that, Don and I have something else in common. We are both passionate lovers of all things Misfits, Samhain, and Danzig. And what's funny is, truth be told, many years ago, I actually had a phone call with Don over the phone. Super nice guy. We had a conversation. It was really great. Speak with him. We spoke about a bunch of different stuff. And what was amazing is recently I noticed, I was like, hey, why does that name sound so familiar to me? I saw him. He was in some groups talking about Misfits related things. I was going, oh, that's the same guy. That's the same guy. And I was like, oh, and I was like, it would be nice to have him on the show and just, just say what's up and say hello and whatnot. Don, when did you, what attracted you to the music of Glenn Danzig, particularly whatever you prefer to discuss, Misfit Sam 8 or Danzig?
Yeah.
What attracted you to that stuff?
I think it's the same attraction that you get when, you hear the first Black Sabbath record, or you hear, any music that you really connect with for the first time. It's really hard to kind of put it's because it's a feeling, like it's not something, it's kind of indescribable. So like when it works, and when it doesn't, it doesn't. And I don't necessarily remember the first song I heard, ironically, but it was probably around 86. My cousin was a couple years older than me, and he was starting to get into like some like speed metal stuff, some like punk, like we started listening to, punk and stuff when we were really young, and we started punk bands together. But that, getting into like Black Flag and stuff. And for some reason, the Misfits didn't like pop up right away, because they kind of are their own thing in so many different ways, like obviously they're part of this thing, but this is 1986. So, and I'm only going by like what was happening in my, immediate surroundings. But my cousin bought a 3 Hits from Hell at Sound Exchange, which was our local, record store we would go to in Jersey, for $4. And that was probably the first record that I listened to, was, those 3 songs, London Dungeon and Horror Hotel and Ghouls Night Out. And it's just like, like, how can you go wrong? Like it's fucking amazing, right? Like it's everything that you like about punk rock, but it's also like melodic. So like, ironically, like I started playing guitar when I was 14. So I was like into the Beatles. I was into singer-songwriter stuff. But I was also getting into punk and screaming. And I was never like I wasn't into just one thing. And so like when you hear the Misfits for the first time, they have that raw energy of punk rock that like when you're a kid, you get sucked into, but then Glenn is a legit singer, and there wasn't anything that sounded like that. I mean, you point out bands like the Damned and stuff, but that's more, to me, that was more goth than punk. Like the Ramones weren't, Joey Ramone wasn't a singer per se. He's got a good, cool voice, but like he wasn't singing like Glenn was singing. There's just something special about what the Misfits were. And I think for, obviously for fans like us still today, that it's still as relevant today as it was when we heard it back then. Yeah, I mean, that was just, and then, but in 1986, the band obviously had already broken up, and it was hard to find those records. Like I remember Walk Among Us, like you would hear about it, and you'd hear somebody who knew somebody who had a record, who had the record. And you'd be like, wait, who? Can we get to his house? Like, can we borrow it? It was like, because it wasn't about collecting at that point. It was just like hearing the shit, right? That's all we wanted was to hear. So somehow, in that kind of like circle, someone was like, WFMU in South Orange, I think, they have a copy of Walk Among Us. So I started calling the Pat Duncan show. I think this was like the punk rock hour or whatever. And I was like, do you have Walk Among Us by the Misfits? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, can you play any song? He's like, what song? I said, I don't know what songs are on it. Just play a song. And
any song.
You couldn't find this shit. I mean, again, I know we sound old when we say stuff like this, but like, man, when you had to like, you needed to like learn shit. Like it wasn't easy. Like it was a job to like get information. Right. So, I asked him to play a song, and I had my tape deck next to my radio to record it. And I wish I still had the tape, but I think Pat was like, and here's one for Don in New Jersey. It's 20 Eyes. And dude, I must've listened to that song like once I had it recorded over and over and over. And I was like, it became this quest to get this record that was like, might as well have been, the Shroud of Turin, or like something that's like, so unattainable, right? Like this, the Holy Grail. So finally, I don't know when it was that we ended up getting, when that got re-released. I think it got released in 88, right? Mm-hmm. So that's probably when I was able to buy it. But up until then, you can get Die Die My Darling, you can get Earth AD. But the singles were like, even at that point, there was a place in East Rutherford that I would go to called Music Man. This guy, Lou, ran it. And he went to school with Glenn. So he had that picture of Glenn with the long hair. He had like it behind the counter, I remember, right? And then in his like case, you know, where they had like highly like collectible stuff, he had a Halloween, and it was $100. And I'm like 16 years old. I don't have $100. So I asked him if I could make payments on it. So I paid him $25 a week for a month. And then at the end of the month, I got this record. And again, I couldn't wait to get it home just to hear the 2 songs on it. You know what I mean? It's like, that's like $50 a song that cost me, you know? And yeah, let's be fair. Halloween 2, I don't know, is worth the $50. You know what I'm saying? But whatever.
Oh man, that was, I gotta tell you, I have to agree with John T. Connor here. He says, first of all, friends and I would listen to all that all the time back in 87, 88. Somewhere in there. Love these interviews, man. Thank you for listening in, John T. You know, yeah, I love, these are my favorite stories to hear, these kinds of stories, because they're not only are they stories of, they're stories of youthful discovery. And that's part of, again, you know, we talk about all the time on the channel, like why, like what is it about this band and this that I want to pour over every little fucking detail? And you know why? Because it's not just a story of entrepreneurs, you know, entrepreneurship via punk rock, self-realization through your own art and entrepreneurship, but it's also, it's coming of age discovery and like the eagerness about not being able to get enough of something that you absolutely love and is in such a finite, precious quantity that you go out and you seek it. And part of that back in the day was the chase. It's just, you gotta, and now, and you know, just to do some sort of full circle armchair psychology, I see you today in groups. Like you're still at it. You have an impressive collection. You know, I see you from time to time commenting and stuff. That's why I like reached out. I was like, I gotta connect with Don because I just know I want to talk to him. What does it do for you today? Whether maybe it's not conscious for you, but if it is conscious for you, what do you get emotionally from doing this really sort of this treasure hunt when you're going out and seeking this sort of stuff? Tell me about that.
You mean getting the records or
yeah, getting the records, having the collection. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I've had to ask myself that a lot recently because this stuff is like so expensive, and you know, you have to like try to justify it somehow. like what am I doing here spending this much money for this much for a 7-inch, or you know? But I think for me, you know, in my office, I have right across from me, I have this like little, it's like a hutch, I guess. I don't know what the fuck it is. It's got a little storage below, and it's got an area to display stuff. And I have all the 7-inches that I have. They're in front of me all the time. And it's like, and it's purposeful because to me, what I've figured out, like in my self-reflective, you know, turning 50, whatever, is like that stuff that I got into when I was 15, 16 years old is the reason why I'm here. It's the reason why I do what I do. And I named my company 914 Pictures because I wanted a cool name, but I also was like, Henry Rollins' publishing company is 21361 and it's his birthday. And I was like, that's fucking killer, right? I don't want my name in it because that's cheesy or whatever. And so I named it 914 Pictures after, but that was my inspiration. And like
my son is 912.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And my daughter's 918. So there you go.
Nice.
Virgos.
Nice.
But what's cool is that for me anyway, how I've looked at it is that this is the stuff that has kept me going, that has given me the, you know, the kind of inspiration that I've needed from time to time to get to kind of keep going. And to me, the physical kind of handmade thing that Glenn created is just, it's kind of, and again, it's only for a certain amount of people that get it and it makes sense for them. It's just, there's just something really special about it. It doesn't feel, it feels like art. It doesn't feel like like a $4 record. It feels like, no, this is like a lot went into this, and this shit's important, and it has stood the test of time. And for me to be able to, like, as I'm working, to look over and see all those records for constant reminder of, like, yeah, man, this is what you're striving for, to like do shit this cool, right? So that maybe, like, whatever, it's not about me like wanting to have that level of fame or anything, but it's like, it's all about this reciprocation of, like, Glenn gave that to me. Somebody gave that to him. It's been passed on, and it comes out in music, it comes out in art, it comes out in film.
Yeah.
We don't know where people get inspired by, Jack Black's a great example. Like, he's carried the torch for, whether people like him or not. Like, he's done a lot for heavy metal in terms of like something that he loves and believes in. He's known as this comedic actor of these high profile movies, but at the end of it, he's just a dirtbag metalhead like we all are. And he brings that energy
about this. We have to talk. I can't believe, I was trying to think in my head. I was like, who did I forget to mention?
Second, my battery's going to die. My battery's going to die.
Go ahead.
I gotta see if I can grab a battery. Give me one second.
Okay. No worries. That's okay. I'm going to fill in the dead air. Don, it's so cool to talk with Don about all this stuff. This guy is out there living the dream, making films, making a living making films. It's really awesome. And he is greatly inspiring to me. He was when I spoke to him many, many years ago over the phone, and he continues to be that way today in just terms of, like, just seeing what he does and how he goes about it. I mean, I'm blown away by the technique that he has employed, that he and his co-director and his filmmaking partners have employed in this Ronnie James Dio documentary. It's just really spectacular. And it's also spectacular to hear, like, just his perspective, where he's at in his life about all these things, because it's like, it's kind of like a glimpse into the future a little bit. So it's just been really great to sit and talk with him and discuss these sort of things. There he is. He's got that's okay. I filled in the dead air. We talked a lot of shit about you, about how, you're just an obnoxious guy. And, wait, I realized we didn't, we're winding down anyway. This is well, first of all, you have to come back on the show. Like, legit, anytime. You have to come back.
I'd love to, man.
We'll do a top 5. You have to come back for a top 5 episode. Those are super fun. We'll talk. But consider this for now. We're in our final descent. We're winding down to land our airplane. But I realized, I was thinking in my head, I'm going like, is there anybody that we missed from that documentary that, like, really needs to be notated? When I saw Jack Black in your documentary, I was like, holy shit. And I was like, dude, the Dio scene in Pick of Destiny, which is one of my, truly one of my favorite films, is one of the highlights. And I am a big Meatloaf fan too, so that, like, scene adds a little extra because I love fucking Meatloaf so much. So the fact that there is a scene in the universe with Ronnie James Dio and Meatloaf, who both are not around anymore, is just so fucking special. But to hear Jack Black's story, that story, for that story alone, everybody needs, whether you are into Ronnie James Dio or not, you have to watch Jack Black talking about recording the song for the movie with Ronnie James Dio and the selection of microphones. Tell me, what is it like to interview Jack Black? What is it like to be in his presence? Just tell me about Jack Black.
He's got a lot of energy. He comes right in with a lot of energy. It was that we did that in some office building in LA because we were going to do it at his house, but it was like the pandemic, the rumblings of the pandemic were just starting. And he was like, yeah, I don't want people at my house or whatever. So we had to find it. And it was like a last minute thing. And, it's like, it's hard enough to get people at his level. We should go into managers and shit like that. So I was like, we will have to figure out a place, because if we lose it, we're probably not going to get him back. So we got him, and he came in. He was so cool. He brought that Dio, like baseball jacket that he got, and he had this whole bit plan, and he's like, I'm going to do something. I'm like, all right, do it. It's like, so you just go with it, and he was, he definitely, he turns it on, right? I mean, he's got that element, and I don't think it's phony as much as it's just exactly who he is, right? It's like
It's
he just
persona.
can't help. It's who he is, right?
It's being on when you have to be on the camera.
Exactly. But you can also see really great glimpses, and that's what I love about, and maybe it's only stuff that I see, but I could see where he's being like genuine. You know what I mean? Like when you're really like when somebody is like performing, but then you get a real authentic moment of like, oh, there's somebody in there that's like a lot deeper than the guy that you're putting out here. But he's amazing. I mean, like an amazing guy who has really done a lot to keep Ronnie's name alive, frankly. And it's funny how, like I said, I'm 50, our generation, grew up in most of, I think people our age grew up with MTV and the music videos. And so like that was our kind of like, that was our gateway into a lot of music in a lot of ways, like from even bad pop music that is still a part of our lives to like Headbangers Ball and all the shit that we had to wait forever just to see like a 4-minute video for. But, I think there's a couple generations after us that like don't like, there's a girl in our office that's like 24. She didn't know who Ronnie James Dio was. She never heard of Quiet Riot. We would say all these things. She's like, I don't know who these people are. So like there's what happened with the internet is I think it made everything accessible and then nobody figured anything out. You know what I mean? It was just like a free for all. Whereas like, for better or worse,
you have to actively seek if you want to learn about something with the internet.
Absolutely. Exactly. And that's cool. But I don't think, because we did too, when we were growing up, that's how we had to find it. But I don't think they're really seeking, or at least they're not finding. I mean, the fact that people are like a revelation that they were hearing Master of Puppets for the first time because it's on Stranger Things is like, I don't know. That's kind of crazy to me, but whatever.
You know what's interesting too about that? Recently I just watched The Flash, and have you seen it? Dude, I don't. Oh, all right. I can't spoil it for you then. All right, forget it. Forget what I was going to say. Let me know when you've seen The Flash.
I will.
I can't even make my point, because if I do, it will give it away. I can't. There's no way to talk about what I want to talk about. I am firmly a non-spoiler unless I'm doing a spoiler-filled review on the channel where I warn people of the spoilers, so I will not say that. But that is so cool that you got to like hang with Jack Black and talk with him, and like, wow, what an experience that must be. That would be shocking for me, because that dude.
The whole thing was cool. Like everybody, and you just feel it's just nice. We've done films about like controversial subjects, and we've done things about like whatever. But it's really, really kind of rewarding when you're doing a film and everybody's doing it for the right reasons, and everybody's doing it because they love the guy, and like it makes you feel good. You know what I mean? Like it's a nice feeling. The premiere of this thing, we premiered in LA and had this great screening at the Man Chinese Theater and had an after party at the Rainbow. It was like insane. And, but just a theater full of people that were just like totally moved, and like, just it's the best feeling ever. It's really the best feeling.
I gotta say, I didn't, I knew that he was into like, wizards and rainbows and magic and shit, but like, I didn't really, I never grasped the whole, I mean, it should have made sense when you're in a band like Rainbow or Elf. Like, I never like the whole thing about the slaying of the dragon with the laser eyes. Like, I didn't know any of that stuff. So that was like, I mean, that was so, that was so great. That was so great. You mentioned the Beatles before, and I wanted to touch on this because I was curious to know, and I didn't want to knock you off whatever your tangent was at the time. Have you seen Get Back?
Oh yeah, it's incredible.
Okay. Yes, it is. It is beyond incredible. It's tremendous. I love it. But what's interesting is I don't know if you noticed this. I you know how much I talk about the Misfits and how much I love the Misfits. As much as I love the Misfits, I love the Beatles as much. Like I like to consider myself an amateur historian or scholar, whatever, on the Beatles. And I read,
love the Beatles.
I've read tons and tons of books about the Beatles. I consider myself fastidiously well read on the Beatles. I was very familiar with what was known as the Winter of Discontent, which is the sessions
Yep, Yoko
from January 2nd all the way up to the end of January, whatever date that was. And listen to podcasts talking about the Nagra reels and what is happening on each reel, and listen, like, lots of detailed content. So when I go into watching Get Back, pertaining to what we were talking about, you can tell, and maybe you have to be, have made movies or like know about editing or something, but you can tell that Yoko Ono had her hands all over this shit, and B, that Peter Jackson did his fucking best, to subversively tell a story that, frankly, his hands were tied, because there were such glaring omissions, talking about what you were talking about like the integrity of us diehard fans knowing about shit and then not even mentioning it in the movie, because if Yoko doesn't sign off on it, it doesn't get out. And so having your hands tied, but yet still somehow being able to get whatever you can in, because that, like a message in a bottle, it's going to reach those diehard fans and they will know what you were trying to say. And I feel like that's what Peter Jackson was doing.
That's interesting, man. Yeah, I'll be honest. I didn't look at it that way, because I think for me, I had already felt that. I mean, there's a lot of Yoko stories, right? But I mean, the one that, like, she was responsible for breaking up the band and all that kind of stuff. That's
she's not responsible for breaking up the band.
John,
it was a factor. It was a teeny little. It was one of many things.
Absolutely. So but to me, it was just such a, like, privilege to be to be able to watch something that feels like it was just made. It looks so current. Yeah. It doesn't look like a grainy, film that, like, got dragged out of the mud or something. Like, it's pristine. It looks like it was just shot, and it's vibrant, and you can see they're alive. And I think, the thing that, I don't know about you, but, like, I was watching it. It was released around Thanksgiving, like last year or something. I remember
my birthday. That was my birthday present. I was very happy.
I was so excited. I couldn't wait. I had, like, my whole, like, couple days planned how I was going to do it. And I think it was the first episode where was it Paul's doing, they're at the studio, the film studio,
Trident.
And and they're and I think wasn't Paul, was it Hey Jude or Let It Be, like, early incarnation of it. And John and George come in with their just the harmonies, like and something in me, it got to the core of me, and I started crying immediately. It was so weird, because I was like, what is going on? Like, it was nothing that led up to it, but I think what it was is, like, these, like, we were talking about before about music and how it's not just like, oh, like, Let It Be's a pretty song or what. It's like woven into you, right? And these are songs that are, like, they're part of your life. And there was something about seeing these two guys that felt so alive, and it was, in that moment, felt so real, and what they created in that moment was so beautiful. I don't know, it totally hit me, and I was not prepared for it at all.
I just want to clarify one thing. The Get Back series is a masterpiece achievement in almost every conceivable way, like, hands down. And the third act, by the way, the way that the story is told, it's a story of underdogs who are the greatest overachievers that ever lived, but self-imposed underdogs, in that they put this self-imposed, like, constraint on themselves, because they have to, whatever they do has to be the best, because everything they've ever done is the best, and putting themselves into a pressure cooker where they may not come out achieving what they hope to achieve. And, the movie is reframed the way that a lot of stuff has gotten reframed and revised over the years, and this, that, and the other. And the truth of the matter is, like, the reason why I feel like everybody's happy and smiling all the time is because that was the one pure aspect of their relationship that was still it was unsullied by anything else. It had nothing to do with business. It was like, we're making music, and when we're making music, we're glued together. We're happy.
All works, right.
It all works. And that's why everybody's like, what are you talking about? It was a bad time. I'm sure there was plenty of bad times.
But you could see it, but you could see very clearly in the film, you know, and it's not trick editing. It's like Paul McCartney's the only person trying to keep that band together. Everybody else can give a shit.
I totally understand. You know what's funny? All these years we've been told, talk about myths and shit. All these years we have been told Paul McCartney is a fucking control freak, blah, 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 blah. And I'm sure that's true. I'm sure he is. I mean, listen, when you're Paul McCartney, you've earned the right to be a control freak. You have a record and a precedent that allows you to call the shots. However, it's this situation where it's like Paul recognizes that if he is not the guy spinning the wheels, then everything is going to fall apart.
100%.
He has to do all that. And his frustrations with George are so understandable. He was made to be such a monster in that whole situation. He's being so understandable. He's saying, hey, George, I'm just trying to get this one song down. I know that we normally noodle. We're in a pressure cooker, man. We got to do this thing, and it's got to be done right now. And then seemingly as a result of stress or nerves or anxiety, he just sits down. I don't know if it's with the guitar or if it's with the bass. I think it's with the bass. He just sits down, and you literally talk about moments that make you tear up. You literally watch somebody pull from the creative force. I believe that there really is, like what the Greeks talk about. I really believe this. This is like my religion. It's not religion, but it's my belief. I believe that there is some place other than here where all creativity comes from. And I think that you can attune your brain to be a channel for that creativity. And I know, I'm sure you've experienced it yourself. I know I've experienced it where you're writing something or you're doing something, and then something just comes to you, and it didn't come from you. It just came from somewhere. And that's what I feel like when I'm watching Paul fucking McCartney sit there thumping his bass, just going, get back,
incredible,
back. And suddenly he pulls the song out of thin air.
Yeah. No question. Yeah, it's incredible.
And the thing too, and this is like more of just about music in general. Like, music is this weird thing. It's noise, and then it's not. It's noise followed by silence. You have to do a certain combination of making noise and not making a noise, and then you create this cohesive thing that is a song. A song is something you can't see. A song is something that you can't hold. But a song is a thing, and it's this very intricate thing, and it exists, and you can experience it with other people. Is there any way that perhaps a song is this thing that already existed somewhere, and you pulled it, you plucked it yourself somehow from this imaginary fucking place?
Like, whoever got the whole lot of love one, like they won out on that one, right?
Yeah, that's a lottery. That's a lottery right there. But eventually that underdog story, what's amazing about it is eventually you get to the third act and they're up on the roof, and it's suddenly the talk about like the footage and how crisp and clear it feels. It feels suddenly like an artistic aesthetic, just the way that you did with your B-roll in the Dio documentary. Yeah. Suddenly I feel like I am in a fictional film being told a story. You know what I feel like I'm in? I feel like I'm in a Wes Anderson movie. The ending of the real life ending of the Beatles on the rooftop feels like a fictional Wes Anderson narrative when they're all sitting around the mixing board in the basement listening back, and they're all smiling. And somehow Peter Jackson found this way to turn what was a very sad realization that the Beatles were going to break up into this very happy moment of triumph.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's the power in stories, right? That's the power in what we do, and it's cool. I love that movie. And just for those types of things, like you get a window into this world that, no one else is allowed. And it's just a cool feeling. It's very cool.
Right. Right. It really is. It's like it's unbelievable. Let me ask you this. I want to double back to the Misfits for a second,
Yeah, yeah,
and we'll be wrapping things up.
yeah.
The market. I want to talk to you about the market as it currently stands because you brought that up before. I find it very interesting. What is going on with the market? You posed a very interesting question in a chat the other day. I
Yeah.
thought it was super fucking interesting. Wanted to kind of expand on it a little bit. Maybe I don't know. Maybe we can't. Maybe everything that was said about it has been said already.
No, I think it's
But this idea. No, sorry. What was the thing that you posed the other day? This notion.
It's funny because like many people back in the day, like that Thrasher magazine, when you're clamoring for information for this band that you love, then you can get things in drips and drabs. When that Thrasher came out, it was like seismic. It was like, holy shit, like this is a real in-depth interview about a lot of stuff, and like stuff that we didn't know about, and stuff that he was maybe setting the record straight on, and then stuff that was in the future. And I remember, because this is the thing that stuck out to me, and I hadn't read that article in like 30 years, but I remember thinking that in it he talked about re-releasing all the singles in like a box set thing,
right?
Like
enter at your own risk.
Yeah. And I was like, I could not wait for that to come out. And now, obviously, all these years later, we probably can guarantee it's never going to come out. There's not going to be anything like that. But because I was thinking there hasn't, the Misfits collecting is so specific. It's a kind of pretty much finite catalog of things you can get. There's obviously all the variants, and you can get wrapped up in all that stuff, which we all stupidly do. But at the end of the day, once that's all collected, it's collected, right? And only thing left outside of all that is like super rare things or bootlegs and things like that. But there has never been anything official in terms of a 7-inch outside of what was initially released back in the day. And like, I would think if they were to do something like that and really make it like amazing packaging, not like a lot of stuff that's happening with Glenn's stuff, his aesthetic now, which is just not what I think is cool, but that's my opinion.
We're in the same boat. We're in the same boat. I agree with
but
you.
If they had, but I know he's got the original screens. I know he's got the original acetates and stuff. So he could go back and really make them legit, which is what, and you could charge whatever you wanted to charge for it, because the people that would buy it, right? But I do think if that kind of flooded the marketplace a little bit, I do think it would potentially affect the collector market to some degree. It would have to, I would think.
Right. The question that he posed in this group, it is a group for collectors of various Misfits, Samhain, Danzig ephemera, just like anything Misfits, Samhain, Danzig related, paper goods, vinyl, the whole rigmarole. But the ultimate question is, how would it affect the market value of all the old stuff? And I am personally the belief that anything that it's this weird sort of market where anything that gets added onto it actually somehow makes the original even more valuable than it was before. It does not dilute the market value of any of the original stuff.
That's interesting.
It does not compete. In fact, because people are such insane completionists, whether you are collecting just stuff from 77 to 83, some people want to collect the 95 stuff, and some people want to collect everything that Jerry has put out. And Jerry, the brilliant thing about Jerry is that it's something that Glenn seemed to like realign himself with in the 2010s and had sort of forgotten about for a time, is this notion of variants and releasing 3 different records. Glenn put out Danzig Sings Elvis. He probably put out 10, 12 different variants, which seems insane, but the people that love this stuff are buying it up, and they need to have 2 copies of everything. And it's the same thing with Jerry. Jerry realized, he's like, what's the point of putting out an album? Instead I could put out a 12-inch EP in 3 to 4 different colors in smaller batches and sell out like crazy. And the thing is, all of that stuff even all that stuff, all that like, extracurricular, whatever, all of that stuff has driven up the value of the original. Because as Don was saying, the original stuff, especially when you look at the cover of Bullet, when you look at 3 Hits from Hell, when you look at any of that stuff, look at my decorations here, all taken from the album covers and reconstituted in my own kind of way because I love it so much. This is art. These are pieces of art now. And Glenn, whether he realized it or not, and I'm sure he realized it on some level because he was a ginormous comic book fan and knew exactly what he was.
Well, he was a collector. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about, I think, that's what he was given to the things that he was into. He got into collecting. And so when it was his turn to make his own stuff, he recognized that other people were going to like the same kind of shit that he was into. And like the fact that like a little piece of paper now, the people like us will spend upwards of whatever, a couple $100 for a piece of paper. It's a piece of paper. Right. But it means everything to be complete in that record. It needs to belong where it should belong. And, and he created all that. And that is something that like, I'll come back and I'll tell you about, we'll have another session about,
we'll have another session. We will.
We'll do that. There's more to talk about.
There's more to talk about. It's yes. We there was so much to talk about this time that we didn't, to open up that can of worms now would be too cumbersome at this moment. But
and I got to put my kid to bed. So I'm going to,
yes. So let's wrap this up now. I want to thank Don so much for coming on. Congratulations. A huge congratulations to you on this a masterful achievement. I'll tell you, a testament to how great your film is that even someone who is not a Ronnie James Dio diehard fan or whatever, deeply enjoyed and appreciated every inch, every second of that documentary is a testament to the good work that you and your team did. So
thanks, dude. I really appreciate it.
And you can pre-order that. That's down in the description below. You can pre-order that right now. There's a beautiful package they got. If you look on the thumbnail of this, you can see all the accoutrement that they have to go with the box set, whatever the hell it is. And the thing, and there's bits and pieces of the press release down below. So if you're curious to learn more about Ronnie James Dio after listening to this episode, please do. And you can find you can find Don at 914pictures.com. Again, all links are all down in the description. We'll say peace and hair. Wait a minute. We didn't do the trivia question. Gotta do that real quick. Okay. All right. I'm gonna play. Okay, so here's the trivia question. Hold on. For anyone who's just joining us or anyone who doesn't remember, hold on real quick. I'm going to be doing a live show every single day. I'm going to be giving away a t-shirt. At the end of every episode, I will ask my trivia question. You will send your answer to FrumessMAIL@gmail.com, and the first person to answer correctly will be the winner. You give me your name, your address, and your t-shirt size. If you are outside of the continental United States, you will have to cover shipping and handling. Join us night after night where I will be doing t-shirt giveaways. Who doesn't like a free t-shirt? I'm not going to go easy on any of you. I'm going to ask really hard questions. So be prepared. Okay. Don's going to ask the question, and then he's going to have to tell me the answer because I don't even know what he's going to say.
All right.
He'll tell me later. So go ahead.
In the later years of Dio's career, he got into an accident where
what just happened? Oh, okay, he's back. Whoa, Don, that was shot. Dude, did you see my face just now? I was like you just disappeared, and I went, oh.
What did happen? That was weird.
I have no clue. It's the software. Sometimes it's
did you get the whole question in?
Nope, I didn't hear anything you just said. Go ahead.
Oh wow. Okay,
here we go. Take it again.
So in Ronnie's later years in his career, when he was a little older, he got into an accident where he cut his thumb off. What was the cause of his thumb getting cut off?
It is literally okay. So I actually was reading on his. I can't tell you. I was reading about it, and I found out this factoid that I was going to ask you about and totally forgot. So I'm so
I'm
glad,
glad
you
you
brought it
didn't.
up. It is literally it's the most magical thing. Like it's like not funny because it was a very serious thing,
but it's kind of beautiful. Yeah,
it's
in the DVD extra. It's not in the film. The story that is not in the film, but
okay,
it is
in the
there. DVD extra. So when you get if you buy the DVD, you'll see in the extras. Yeah.
Okay. Peace and hair grease. Don, hang on 1 second while I end this thing. Send in your answers, FrumessMAIL@gmail.com. Thank you.